Yes, I'm David Jenkins. I'm honored to be here tonight. As I sat and thought about the evening of reflection, I couldn't help but think of the progress I made, although sometimes I wasn't aware of it when I was in the hospital. I didn't have a good starting point as a reference. And I also reflect on kind of a grieving process about things that I don't have anymore. My physical abilities diminished, and I think all of us can relate to that, and my mental capacity, as you'll probably find out. This morning I was reading an article. I'm in some support groups, and I came upon an article, research about cellular memory, where traumatic events exist in our cells, and they pass from one impulse to the other. And if it's not treated, it becomes an emotional and physical liability. So I'm grateful for the treatment I got at Origami. I want to start the article that I was reading about cellular memory ended with a quote by Helen Keller, and she says, "Although the world is full of suffering, it is also full of the overcoming of it." And I thought that applied pretty well to some of our circumstances. I was raised in a Catholic family of 11 children, 6 boys and 5 girls in Portland, Michigan. I'm the 9th child. I had a great childhood, normal by most standards. I joined the Navy straight out of high school. I have 4 daughters and 6 grandchildren. 2 twin boys recently came along a month ago. One of my greatest blessings. Other than grandchildren, my wife and I enjoy live music, the Great Lakes, and family in general. We saw 14 concerts in 2019 after being discharged from the hospital in February. I worked at a water treatment plant in Delta Township for 27 years as a mechanic lab tech. In 2014, I was diagnosed with idiopathic pulmonary fibrosis, a progressive lung disease. It involves scarring and stiffening of the lung tissue, which complicates the transfer of oxygen. As a reference point, pulmonary fibrosis is a restrictive lung disease, which makes it problematic getting air in, whereas asthma and COPD are obstructive. It's hard to get air out. I currently volunteer for Gift of Life, and I have recently begun a new part-time job working as a transporter for non-emergency medical clients, taking them to doctor appointments, which I really enjoy. I'm able to relate to people, and I love talking about myself. While I was at Origami, we addressed speech, physical, psychological, and occupational therapy. Wait a minute, did I miss something here? I'm sorry. In November of 2018, I had a double lung transplant at University of Michigan Hospital. Go Blue! I had multiple complications, including MRSA pneumonia. I spent 6 weeks on ECMO life support, which is a machine that circulates your blood and puts oxygen in it to give you time to recover from whatever illness you have. So they were hoping my lungs would recover. While I was on the ECMO, I had a right hemisphere stroke followed by a seizure, which was my traumatic brain injury. For several weeks, the doctors didn't know if I would survive. They had relisted me for another transplant. And when I had the stroke, they took me off the list, and my lungs started working. We believe the stroke saved my life. because it was very unlikely I would have survived another transplant so soon. I was not really capable of communication. I had very few visitors. I was heavily sedated most of the time. I spent over 3 months in the hospital, 6 weeks in ICU. I had many moments of agitation, pulling feeding tubes, and anything else that was dangling by my bed. I was heavily sedated at this time and had many odd, if not scary, dreams. Once I videotaped them replacing my feeding tube for the 3rd time. I experienced ICU delirium, which is an event where you are in ICU for an extended period of time and you lose track of days and time, and that's where the agitation and a lot of the frustration comes in, because you don't know how long you've been laying in that bed. I had many odd, if not scary, dreams. I covered that. I was often overcome by frustration, fear, and resentment. I had a whiteboard but couldn't write legibly, and no one could read my lips. Well, in reality, they weren't even moving. But in my brain, I thought they were moving. I was mad. When I awoke after my stroke, my siblings were all in my room, and I knew something bad had happened. I was very scared. I had to start PT, but I was very weak, recovering from a transplant and a stroke, and had hot flashes on the left side of my face, which were debilitating. I struggled to get out of bed for a while. Before being discharged, I did 3 weeks of rehab at U of M, 8 weeks of in-home therapy, and then I ended up doing 5 months rehab at Origami. Well, there we addressed speech, physical, psychological, and occupational therapy. My left arm was challenged, as well as my vision and cognitive abilities. I also had to do a simulated driving because of the seizure that I had. I had to requalify to drive, which was complicated. My deficiencies were frustrating and also ego deflating because I wanted to be the way I used to be. It challenged my spirituality, wondering why was this God's will for my life. My close friend John would say, do the best you can and let God do the rest. But through it all, some of my siblings grew closer and gained some spirituality themselves. I guess God knows what he's doing. I also had a lot of guilt. I also had a lot of guilt for the burden I put on my wife. The household chores, chauffeur, surrendering her own needs for mine. Unfortunately, the caregiver often gets forgotten. My wife is truly an angel sent from God. Therapy at Origami was definitely life-changing, with the patience and compassion from the staff. Thanks to Bethany, Mackenzie, Amanda, Erica, Julianne, and Heather, and so many others, including all the great interns that were involved. Occupational helped me with my coordination and dexterity on my left side. Psych helped me process the situation that I was left with. My vision needed help. I didn't understand how your eyes work. When you look at something close, your eyes converge. In that distance, they diverge, which is really needed when you're driving. So many things our body does that we take for granted. Flossing, putting in eye drops, using a Q-tip. My brain had to be reconnected with my hand. I actually had to watch my hand to accomplish a task. My mechanical skills were not well at all. I still struggle with those. But you know, I recently heard a woman say, be grateful for what hasn't happened. And that puts a whole different twist on gratitude right there. Speech and memory therapy helped me with reasoning, decision-making, and strategies. I look at the calendar a lot, put things by the front door, and remember to use timers, even still. I have developed more patience and acceptance for myself and others, especially those with handicaps. and a lot of gratitude because it can always be worse. I saw that when I was in rehab at U of M, other spinal cord injury people and brain injury, I had it pretty good. You know, I'm grateful that my stroke was on the right side of my brain. It affected my left side, and I'm right-handed. So how lucky was I? I want to thank Jesus Christ for my life, my donor family and my donor and their family for the ultimate gift. I pray for them often. Thank my wife Gina, my caregiver who put her life on hold and never got any sedation. My sister Monica, who was the communication hub for Gina and my large family. Close friends John and Heather for the constant support. A shout out to Monica and my sister Dory and her husband Jeff for the awesome foot massages. They were much appreciated. Let me tell you, I owe you. Not tonight. It's amazing how your skin breaks down when you lay in bed for 3 months. I would also like to personally thank all of those who prayed for someone they didn't even know. My family started a prayer chain that went around the world, started in Michigan to Montana to Florida to Brazil, where we had an exchange student when we were kids back in the 70s. This woman is still part of her family, and our prayer chain went all over the world. People prayed for me that I'll never even know. I submit a letter to my donor family yearly, and I'm still waiting correspondence. I would love to connect with them if they choose to do so, although I know that a large percentage of recipients never hear anything from their donor families. My life is blessed in so many ways. Though I am still experiencing neurofatigue and some challenges with my left arm, it can be frustrating. I use a serenity prayer a lot. Throughout the course of COVID-19, my wife and I received therapy for anxiety and PTSD. I want to continue to get healthy physically, emotionally, and spiritually. I don't make New Year's resolutions. I just wake up and try to live each day the best I can. You don't get the rainbow until you've had the rain, and we had a soaker. Thank you.